Right then, hi everyone, welcome to our webinar on how to enliven virtual meetings and engage your audience. I'm Karl Kocar, I'm the Managing Director of Reed Technology, and joining us today is Karl Kocar, Technical Architect at Microsoft. Good morning, Karl.
Good morning, how are you? How is everyone?
Not bad myself, not bad at all. How are you holding up during lockdown?
Very well, thanks.
Or new lockdown, as we're calling it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'll be honest, my world hasn't changed that much, and I'll explain why during the session.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much. So the main aim of this event is to discuss different ways you can use technology to provide inclusive digital experiences with some tips and tricks for making your virtual business meetings more engaging. So as we prepare for the future of hybrid workplaces, is going to be more and more important. So you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. We'll answer them at the end of Karl's talk. If you just want to add them using the chat function on the top right, feel free to do that as we go along, but we'll do the questions at the end of the webinar. So let's get started. Over to you, Karl.
Thanks very much. So hi, good morning, everybody. As already introduced, my name's Karl. I'm one of the technical architects at Microsoft. I suppose my area of expertise is around Microsoft Teams, which alludes to the virtual meeting conversation. As I said, my world since the lockdown hasn't changed too much, because I've pretty much for a large majority of my career have worked virtually using technology to reach out to internal colleagues, but more importantly to our partners in Microsoft and also our customers. If you want to find out a little bit more about the technical side of my role, I put a link to my Teams blog there. So if you do have a technical background and want to understand a little bit more about some of the meeting experiences and the calling experiences that Microsoft Teams offers, have a look there. But to be honest, for the rest of today's discussion, I'm going to abstract away from sort of like a vendor-specific conversation. I might use examples where I use Teams as I suppose an illustration of the point I'm making, but I think whatever technology you use, the basic concepts are the same. Now, one of the things I wanted to do, because this session, I suppose, is about engagement and trying to make virtual meetings more interesting, what I've tried to do is maybe start off with some audience participation. So Olivia or Christy, if you'd like to put that link into the Q&A, polev.com, OCP Modern Work, then I highly encourage everybody just to open up a browser session and navigate to that link and just let me know how you're feeling today. So when we're running events with colleagues or with external participants, sometimes we like to just do an icebreaker just to get a feel for how everyone's feeling, because when you're not in the same room as people, then it's ultimately very hard to do, especially in these types of broadcast events. So what I'll probably do, just to eat my own dog food, as sometimes we say in the tech community, is I'll click on that link and I'll navigate to my browser and I'll share in that experience as well. So hopefully, please, well, here we go. There we go. We're coming in. Taking, obviously, there we go. Technology did not let us down. So I'm feeling good as your host today, or one of the hosts today. I think that's imperative that we in the presentation team's feeling good. And let me just check to see how everyone else is feeling. Hey, so we've got some engagement. So these tools are useful. Obviously, you know, we don't overuse them and we use them appropriately. But I think that does let me know that most people are fairly upbeat today, and no one is feeling, you know, down and depressed. Which and to be honest, given the situation we're all finding ourselves in, you know, that's allowed. You know, having a bad day, I think, is okay, and to be able to share that across the virtual environment sometimes is important, because you can't pick up all of the body language that historically we've used to trigger that type of empathy with our colleagues or our customers. Right, so let me navigate back to the presentation. Right, so we had a look at that. So what I wanted to do next, and apologies, is just talk about as a little bit of an intro into what we've seen in the market. There's this common theme that's run through the industry that I work in, is that we have seen a couple of years of we call it digital transformation, but it's the adoption of technology to help us work better remotely based on the situation we've all found ourselves in. It's happened rapidly. A lot of organisations have either had to embrace the new technology from scratch and get used to using it, or others have had to roll it out rapidly, and all of that fear, uncertainty, of doubt which they may have had prior to that has been swept away. And I think the results I'm getting back from discussions, not just within the Microsoft bubble with the people I deal with, but with friends and family who are professional people in their own right, they're actually quite liking some aspects of it. It's not perfect, we all know that. You can't beat a human interaction for certain types of meetings, but for transactional discussions within the organisation and even with our customers, it's really useful. And what we're finding is that some of the work-life balance improvements are resonating with the workforce as well. And you know, the daily commute is currently much reduced, if not a thing of the past. And the vibe I'm getting both from businesses and you know, professional friends is that it's not going to go back to how it was in a lot of cases. Maybe some organisations will just go back to how they used to work, but a lot of others won't. And what you'll see, and I'll talk about it later on, is maybe more of a hybrid approach to where we work. I wanted to start with just a couple of insights before we get on to some of the tech tools that I'll highlight during this discussion on the meeting behaviours that we see. Now, the first point is, albeit the technology might have changed, or we might have introduced technology to help us be productive virtually in meetings, people haven't changed. Whatever the situations, we're pretty much the same. And as a species, we're wired for, as it says here, collaboration. It is natural for us to want to get together to discuss issues, discuss opportunities, and to work together for a common aim. And what we're trying to do with the virtual meeting environment is make that as easy as possible and pseudo-natural. It will never be as natural as sitting around the table, but we still need to ensure that we have certain amount of capabilities that technology can provide to make the interaction as easy as possible. The other thing that I've noticed, and again, it's something that has been exhibited through discussions with people outside of my organisation, is that because we're working remotely now and having virtual meetings, that's really an intersection of when people are available. But I've noticed that some colleagues will start early and finish at a decent time, and others will start later and work through the night, and that's okay. It's just getting to the rhythm of this remote work, I suppose, ethos that works for an individual, and then coming together at appropriate times for these maybe shorter, sharper interactions. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But the key thing is, when we're having the meetings, the virtual meetings, is if you are the host, it is one of the key roles now. Even more important than an old world physical meeting, is that we need the host to make sure that everybody is feeling included, and that the meeting runs to an agenda and on time. So that the host role is pretty key these days, even more than it was previously, as I mentioned. Another insight, as I talked about a moment ago, is the switch over away from maybe full day meetings with a lot of people sitting around a table to actually starting to go for shorter meetings, less than an hour in a lot of cases. In my personal life at work, I actually have 45 meetings is pretty much the longest meeting I want to have most of the time, unless it's to present a technical topic. Might run on a bit longer than that, but with breaks in between. But a lot of the time I go personally for 30-minute meetings, because they're basically there to make decisions or discuss specific topics, and then we'll move on. And what I find is I'll have breaks in between them, and I can get a lot of meetings in during the day if I need to, but still I need to have time to prepare and to follow up as well. And those shorter meetings help me do that. As in conjunction with the shorter meetings, what we're finding, and this is where technology can play a part, especially with, in my world, Microsoft Teams, but there are other solutions out there where we can actually do a lot of the collaboration asynchronously before the meeting to do the prep for the topic that we want to talk about, have the meeting, as I say, keep it short, and then wrap up asynchronously as well to achieve that common goal. Now, one thing on the right hand of the slide, which is really important, and again, I would suggest is a key thing, and I've seen certain other organisations doing this, are these, and I'll use the inverted commas here, planned informal meetups, is giving the opportunity for the team or individuals within the organisation a chance to have those coffee machine chats. I mean, I think that's the sort of like the historical analogy that I'll use there, so that people can just have an informal get together and just talk about what they're up to, because again, going back to our collaborative nature, we'll spark off each other and come up with those ideas. So you need to build that into this remote world, remote meeting environment that we're starting to live, or we have been living, sorry, for a number of months, and it looks like that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. So don't forget that part, is what I'm trying to say here. The informal nature of your interaction with colleagues or partners or customers. So that was really just a bit of an intro, which I'm assuming that most people will be familiar with a lot of the concepts in there already, having been forced to work from home in a number of instances for a number of months. The one thing that I'm very keen, and I think technology can play a part in, is making sure that this virtual experience that we're using on a day-to-day basis now to do our jobs is inclusive, and as inclusive as possible. And as I say, technology has a place in this, but it's not just about technology. One of the things about being inclusive is ensuring that you connect at a human level with your audience or your colleagues or your customers. And so don't forget to make sure that you have that preamble like you would in a normal meeting back in the day when we used to sit around desks, as I said, and share something about yourself. In my case, I've got no roof at the moment in my house. We've got builders in, and it does make it pretty important that I choose the right room to work from, and ensuring we need to make sure that we somehow connect, and that allows us not just to have a good meeting, but ultimately one of the things about doing business, especially outside the organisation, is building trust, and that's still a human thing, not a technology thing. One of the other areas which I think is important, and again was brought home to me again a couple of weeks ago, is around self-awareness during a virtual meeting, with the use of, especially with video. Let me give you an example. I was on a call, an internal planning call with a few of my colleagues, and we were talking about an event that we were going to deliver, or we are going to deliver in October. Now, I was a bit naughty, really, because I'd glanced at one of my devices and checked a personal email, and it wasn't news that I was particularly pleased with. And unbeknown to me, I reacted like that. If the video's on, and the facial expression was immediately broadcast to all my colleagues, and I kid you not, I had people typing away saying, "Are you okay? Do we see? Is something wrong?" And one of my colleagues rang me up because we were mid-conversation at the time, saying, "Did I say anything to offend you?" So again, be aware of the body language still that's presented over video, and if you are, your mind wanders and you do look at something else, make sure that it doesn't impact you in the context of the call that you're already on, because people will pick it up even across the remote medium. And the other area is technology. There are lots of tools out there that you can use. One of the things that I'm pretty keen on is the use of surveys during a meeting. So what I'm going to ask you now quickly, just to do me a quick favour and click on this link, Olivia, if you, or Team, if you could put this aks.ms/read link into the chat, then if you just have a quick look at that, that's a form which actually captures information which could be pertinent to this call, asking you around, you know, your opinions of working from home, what works well and what doesn't. So please have a look at that. I won't share it on the screen. It's an anonymous link. Everything we're doing today is anonymous. There's no privacy concerns here, hasten to add. And have a look. Now, these tools can give you a very professional survey experience in literally 5 minutes, you know, and so it's not a large piece of work to use modern technology to build something that looks professional, but you can start to share during the meeting to capture information, which again can be very useful to the goal that you want to achieve as working as a community. So hopefully you've had a quick look at that and now navigated back to the meeting. So I'm just going to carry on. The other thing around, I suppose, accessibility is making sure that any documentation that we share during the meeting virtually and also in this asynchronous wrap up is accessible. You know, some people have to use readers and such like, so ensuring that the documentation, the PowerPoints that you're sharing absolutely have alternate text and you know, have those descriptions of the pictures in them is fundamentally important. Maybe not to me, but to other people in my community, absolutely. So ensure that you're using those types of tools for the content that we're using remotely. And this is really key as well. As you can see in my screen, I'm using captions. A lot of meeting tools have these built in because, again, when we're delivering PowerPoint, maybe it's easy, but there is a lot of general conversation that happens in meetings where you want to have the same sort of caption service available for the audience as well. So ensure that if you're not using these or you've not come across that in the tool that you might be using, ensure firstly check that they're there, and if they're there, understand how you can use them and how colleagues or customers can use them if they attend your sessions. It's always polite and actually valuable to just flag that up in a business meeting. Just it shows that, you know, you're considerate, and also it's very valuable, as I said, for others who might want to use those tools. In fact, some of the services can not just do captioning, they can do translation. And what I thought I'd do, just to bring this to life, is just show you a video to bring the technology into the fore about what this can do.
Hello, my name's Karl Kocar and I'm a technical architect at Microsoft. It's true that technology can connect people in how they communicate, learn, transact and experience the world, but it can also exclude people if not designed for accessibility. Therefore, digital technology must increasingly satisfy the needs of the diverse population it aims to serve. During this short video, I'm going to demonstrate a number of capabilities built into Microsoft Teams that are designed to support accessibility. Teams meetings support a captioning service, which is controlled via Teams policy setting. When enabled, each attendee can turn on captioning from the More Actions button surfaced in the meeting control bar. Automatic speech recognition is used to turn the meeting audio into text. This is a demonstration of the Teams captioning service. Participants in a Teams meeting can use it to enhance the accessibility of the call. The meeting captioning service has also been extended onto the Teams mobile client. An accessibility feature that can be used within a Teams meeting chat is the immersive reader. This capability allows an attendee to select chat and perform a language translation and/or have the word, sentence or paragraph read out as a result of a text-to-speech action. Not shown in the video but available in the immersive reader is the ability to alter the text appearance, such as the size, font, spacing, background colour, grammatical emphasis and line spacing.
Lee GU at Thursday, the 11th of June 2020 16:57. Everyone has the right to participate freely in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and to participate in scientific progress and its achievements.
If a Teams meeting is recorded, the system can also provide a transcription of the meeting, which allows attendees to read through the audio conversation that occurred. It also allows for easy searching of the transcript, so people who are not able to attend the meeting can arrow into the parts of the conversation and recording that are important to them. Live events also support real-time transcription services for attendees. This is a demonstration of the Teams captioning service. Participants in a Teams meeting can use it to enhance the accessibility of the call. Live events also support real-time translation services for up to 6 languages simultaneously, which is especially useful if you have an international audience. In our example, the live event attendee had chosen to receive a real-time French translation. Every meeting participant can also choose to receive a translated version of the audio. The live event subtitles can be configured based upon personal choice for font size, text color, and background transparency. After a Teams produced live event, the host can download the transcription of the meeting for each language that was available for real-time translation.
So I hope that demo was informative. And again, its purpose really is to show you there are tools available in these cloud-based meeting platforms, which again might help certain individuals or parts of the audience to engage better in the meeting. For example, if you're dealing with that international audience, if you've got the translation service running, sometimes because English isn't their first language, having those captionings there in French in this case would have been very helpful. And I did actually check when I to ensure that the translation was pretty accurate, and as far as I can tell with my rudimentary capabilities in that area, it was looking good. So over time, this has improved tremendously, because underneath the covers, what we're really using here is artificial intelligence, and this is one of the applications that AI and the tech sector can really help yourselves, our partners, our customers with, in terms of starting to provide these value-added tools to help this remote environment, as I say, tick better for organisations. So what I thought I'd do now for say 10 or so minutes is just talk about some of the tips and tricks for virtual business meetings. There are lots of them. They may not all work for yourselves. It's very much a personal choice, and that, you know, there is by no intent on my part to preach at you in terms of what works and what doesn't. A lot of this actually, and here's the gold dust, is speaking to people after you've tried something, whether they be colleagues or customers, the customers you're friendly with, and just getting some feedback as to if something you've tried in a meeting works, because you've got to do something for the first time, get a bit of feedback on it, see how it was received. If it didn't work, fine. I think we just shelve that and maybe we try something else. It really is, you know, sometimes just a learning curve that everybody goes through, and I think it's important that, you know, we be in this current situation, we'd be prepared to explore options to try and make things, as I say, firstly inclusive, and secondly, really importantly, interesting as well. So these ones are quite interesting, and you have to, as an organisation, have to be culturally ready for some of it, And I think this slide did originate in the US. I don't have any claim to fame on this one. And it might be that, you know, you work in an organisation where comparing odd socks is absolutely going to be the icebreaker you need, or maybe you work with a set of folks that actually are you know, coin operated, and maybe prizes and competition is the way to engender engagement. So there are various approaches you want to try, and then there's the empathy piece as well, is ensuring that if you're in a meeting with people that you don't know, that you try and form some form of connection with them. Now, I'm not saying that's easy to do out the gate, but these are the areas that sometimes you might want to consider trying and exploring, maybe internally first. There is, in all of these slides, and I should have mentioned this, all of these slides do have some public domain links on them. I'll make sure you get the PowerPoints for our colleagues at Reed. You know, we'll work out a way to publish it. I can use LinkedIn, for example, to share, and you can click on these, and these are all third-party references around some wider ideas, again, that you might want to put into play if you're really serious about making the virtual meeting experience as engaging and as informative for the participants as possible. And again, in some contexts is unnecessary, but in others may be important. For example, team meetings is where we in Microsoft start to use this type of thing. We don't really have prizes, but we'll try and find something to talk around, which is of interest. For example, in our last call, we did a quiz that NASA put together about how to survive on the moon if you crash landed, and that really got us engaging as a team, and it was actually fun to do. So think about other things, not just work related, that you can do with the technology as you might do in your private lives. Now, some of the other things that you want to consider and for tips and tricks are, especially within the organisation, given that you're not in the office at the moment in a lot of cases, you still want to form those networks. Again, in my work life, networking within a large organisation or with is very important. So consider maybe icebreakers. There are tools that allow you to have this. Microsoft have them, third parties have them. One example in my world is Icebreaker, where you can set the system up where it will schedule time between you and a pretty random colleague. But it does lead to really interesting conversations, because you might think, oh, job-wise, I have nothing in common with this person, and then suddenly you realise you might be working on the same customer, but coming from a different angle, or have a common goal, and immediately you've got somebody in your network. So it can. In the old days, that you might have done this somehow in the office, but you can use technology to do this as well. The other thing in meetings which sometimes crops up are awkward pauses, and that's a tough one, because they're awkward, but give it time. Because a lot of the time it's just a natural part of the meeting, is that people are taking time to consider. So don't feel necessarily you always have to jump in and fill that gap. Again, sometimes as the host you might feel obliged to if it goes on for too long, but sometimes it's a natural part of the meeting. So again, just be aware of that. And what is key, and I think is really important, especially with where we all currently are, is to make sure that we give praise, say thank you. I'm certain that in pretty much all of your own organisations, this is something which you do as a matter of course anyway. But if by small chance you don't, try and drive that culture as best you can, because it really, everyone's feeling a bit more isolated than normal. We're all sitting here. Especially if I've got colleagues that do work at home by themselves, they for whatever reason that they're not with family, and I know that having got these check-ins that I have with my colleagues, that there is that potential to feel isolated. Bit of praise, icebreakers are potentially ways of overcoming some of those challenges at a more human level. So it's not just about the business in terms of using the virtual meetings. Sometimes there's the ability to help our colleagues, help our customers as well. And again, there's a link here which might be of useful for those of you who are interested in this type of thing. Now, this is key. I would say 8 months ago, the usage of video in meetings was relatively low outside of my specific bubble. I work in tech. I work with people who are like-minded and in the partner community at Microsoft and customers, and they would use video, albeit that I would go deeper and wider in organisations, and I definitely get the feel that trailed off massively. I think the adoption of video has increased because people are using it now in their personal lives, but the rules are fairly simple. Use it when at all possible. The body language does come across, as I mentioned with my personal experience a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't a positive one in my instance, but again, it is important to be able to share enthusiasm and facial expressions with your audience and with your colleagues. So the reality of the situation, sometimes the network, that nebulous network thing will make that harder. But again, some of the tips are to use a wired connection if you've got a problem with your Wi-Fi, wherever you are, at home or somewhere else. And just maybe use one of those speed checkers that you can access from your own iPad or from Windows 10, and just see what the bandwidth's like. In most broadband services across the country, it's pretty decent these days. In fact, I'd go as far to say that a lot of times it's as good, or maybe sometimes even better than an office, because you're not sharing it with anyone, or at least many people, depending on if you've got children, what they're doing, and other family members. But video on as possible, it's great. The focus should really be on yourself, and gone are the days where I said I've got the builders in. My house is a bit of a mess, so using blur or these backgrounds is maybe the key to keep the focus on you. Some people might be not embarrassed, but conscious if for example they're having to work in a cluttered environment just because of their circumstances. Blur it out. Use a background. These tools exist in our platform and others. If you're not using them, explore them, try them, see if they work for you. Don't make it about the background. Would be my personal. It's good for a laugh, but again, I tend to use blur or, when appropriate, just a neat personal background, because again, I've got pictures of my family on the wall. In some situations, that's a good talking point as a preamble to the meeting. And the camera framing is quite important. We all make that mistake. I've shown there on the slide, it should be in the center of the screen. A lot of the time you see people top of their heads, or the one thing I would try and avoid is having a camera an angle so that you're talking into your laptop and then people are seeing the side of your face. Again, it is personal choice. If that's the way you want to present yourself to your audience, that is your choice. But again, from the audience's perspective, they're just seeing the side of your head, and all your facial expressions are lost. So something to think about, even just for something that's natural as video. Audio is key. If you couldn't hear me, the meeting's a virtual meeting. You can't engage without audio. Somebody has to be speaking most of the time, and it's really important. Now, the key thing here is to ensure that you've got, and it's a bit of a plug for tech, but it is true, you literally get what you pay for in this space, is to have a decent audio peripheral device. I'm using a speakerphone at the moment, one that's certified for Microsoft Teams. I have a decent headset with noise cancellation if I'm working in somewhere that's particularly noisy. It's worth an investment in, especially now, so that people can hear you clearly and there is no noise inserted by having what I call, a dodgy headphone or a dodgy speaker. Make sure that you've got the right equipment there. And it's a bit of a plug for tech, but it's actually an important one, because again, the meeting won't fly unless everybody can hear you or hear each other. Then make sure you've got the right device set up, which is again, learn the tool that you're using. That everyone has these sort of like settings, making sure that for the meeting that you're in, you're using the right device. As I say, I'm using speakerphone for this one because just wanted to be able to throw my hands around and not having anything over my ears. And the other thing is, you saw that I was presenting a video earlier. Make sure, again, it's all about learning a bit about the tech, at least from the usability angle, is that if you want to do similar, and it may or may not work, videos in presentations, if nothing else, it gives me a break, but you can include the system audio. Make sure that you train your brain to think, am I playing something which is going to play a video or sound? Click whatever button it is on the vendor's graphical user interface, and then rest assured that sound will go up to the attendees. Now, this is a key one because presenting to an audience is, personally speaking, has always been challenging. Something I've had to work on over my career to various degrees of success. But speaking to a slide and knowing that there's a bunch of people remote can be quite daunting. And so it is a skill, and it's something like any skill that you should prepare and practice for as much as possible. So there are various ways that you do this. Maybe a lot of you already do this, or maybe you're just good at it. I mean, and if you are, kudos to you, and that, great. But if you want to come across better, then there are a couple of things that I would recommend you do. Is one, there's tools like I'm showing here, a Microsoft tool, which again is embedded in PowerPoint. It's the online version of PowerPoint though, not the fat client that sits on your desktop. So go onto the online version of PowerPoint, go into presentations, and you'll find it, or do a Google or Bing, and you'll find it. But what it will allow you to do is to rehearse your PowerPoint presentation, and it will give you a summary. So you'll talk for a while, you'll cover the content, and then it will give you, it's based on the AI, the smart stuff at the background. It will tell you, whether you're umming and ahhing, because that is a common thing. And maybe I'm doing it now, and it's subconscious a lot of times. So you need to be picked up on these. And if you've done loads of presentations, you'll know that at some point you'll be perfect or really good, and then you'll lapse into bad habits over a period of time. And if no one tells you about them, because they're subconscious, you won't notice them. So tools like this can potentially pick that up. My problem is monotone. I think I sound like a Dalek. So having some feel about where I am on that monotone graph is really important for me, so that I can make sure that I'm using my voice correctly, which is vital with that good peripheral that I talked about a moment, and being one of the main forms of communications in a virtual meeting. And then the pace as well. If it's a UK meeting, you can probably talk faster. But one of the things I learned working in an international role, I actually have to speak more slowly, because my colleagues, who are super smart, smarter than me, are taking what I'm saying and turning it into their own language, and they just need a little bit more time. So just again, think about who the audience is sometimes as well. And sensitive phrases, those are obviously words that we shouldn't be using in business meetings, or maybe sort of like nuances. So again, making sure, which is standard practice, making sure that none of that has crept in subconsciously. So that's a great tool. The other thing I do, which isn't on the slide, is just video myself, and it's not because I like to watch myself on video. It's cringeworthy. It's absolutely, like sticking needles into me. But what I've found over my career, and speaking to colleagues and customers and partners over the years around this, is that we're always our harshest critics. And if we're sort of pseudo happy with how we're coming across, then most people will think it's pretty natural. So video is a great medium. It picks not just up the audio elements, maybe in conjunction with what I've just shown you, but also, you know, your movements during the online session. Because if you're just sitting there, you might have a good voice, but if you're just sitting there like a statue, then you might not come across as well as if you are doing some hand movements and trying to emphasize the point as you would in a live meeting. So hopefully that might be of interest. Finally, I just thought, again, there are some tips and tricks, again, in combination of PowerPoint and Teams and other platforms that you might want to look at. And I just put together a quick 90-second video, which might, if you're not using this and you're new to the area and you want to rely on your presenter notes, then this is class, really. This is a good tip to use. Sometimes we have to present on things that we know less well than others, and every little bit helps. And as well as being access to the notes, it does give us access to sort of like laser pointers and other tools, which again, for some sessions are really important.
I created this short video to remind Microsoft Teams users that you can still use PowerPoint presenter mode when in a meeting. When you are ready to share, the trick is to share your PowerPoint presentation via the window option. Then, to switch to presenter mode, simply press your mouse's right-click button and select the Show Presenter View option. You are now in presenter mode within a Microsoft Teams sharing session. This means you can see what slide is coming next and have access to those handy presentation notes. You can also make your virtual presentations more impactful by using the annotation tools to highlight important points you want to make. And from the audience's perspective, all they see is your interactive professional delivery.
So again, just a simple tool. Everybody's probably aware of presenter mode, or at least heard of it. Just knowing sometimes it can be used within the Teams context or a virtual meeting context, give you a little bit of a, you know, a lift up in terms of presenting some of the content. A lot of the time you won't need it, but again, having these little tips and tricks available to you might be useful. The other thing I'll just start to round off the session with is around generation participation. I did talk about this a bit. So again, a lot of this is pretty logical. It's just making sure in the context of your environment, your meeting, that you're using what's appropriate. I would love to use whiteboard a lot of the time, but my stylus is broken at the moment, so that one's off the cards for me until I can get a new one. But again, demos, I like the video demos myself, because again, it's bringing stuff to life. The polls are useful as well, and again, in a formal meeting, we'd have the call out, which again is important just to break the ice. Right, so to round off the next couple of minutes, to leave some time for any Q&A if there is any, I just want to talk about what happens next, really. And to be honest, by the sound of things, this isn't actually going to be imminent, but at some point life will start to normalise, we hope. So what I thought is one of these icebreakers, and let me just go back to the Pole EV OCP Modern Workplace screen, and I'm going to literally go and change this. This goes back to sort of being prepared for the meeting. I normally, if this I had the opportunity to have a buddy here, we'd have two of us, and that person would control this, but I'm doing everything today, so it's a bit clunkier than it would normally be. But go there. I thought, and again, this is aspirational. It's all carbon neutral. You can choose wherever you want to go. But I thought, when we come out of lockdown, given that a lot of people's holidays have been kiboshed this year, is where would we like to go? It'd be good to see where people's aspirational holidays would be after lockdown. And again, maybe not applicable to this particular context, but these are the sorts of things you can start to think about. So let's see if anyone has clicked this. I'm just going to go there myself. Whoop, excuse me. And I'll just go here and do this. This is the clunky bit, sorry. So, oh, is that me or someone else? So at the moment, we've got somebody who, Australia, Russia. Yes, that is Russia, isn't it? Yeah, perfect. So again, being able to do this type of interaction real time with the audience is potentially informative, but also gets you doing something, and again means that might have some value in terms of whatever you're trying to achieve as a common goal. So let's move on and go back to my presentation. So excuse me one moment, just find my screen. There we go. Right, so just to wrap up, focus, inclusion, absolutely. You know, virtual meetings, more important than ever to ensure that everybody's comfortable, using tools when appropriate. Second thing, serendipity. You know, make sure that you have those chance encounters, albeit they might have to be a bit more forced, so that you can talk around the topics that you're working on with a wider set of colleagues, look for common goals, and spark ideas off each other. That's not gone away. You still need to, in my humble opinion, still need to try and create those chance encounters. And then again, make sure that everybody's in the meeting has a sense of, you know, you check in with each other, see how you are, especially for internal ones. As I say, some people might be having a bad day. It's okay to share because again, we're living in a strange environment. So just to wrap things off completely, really what my takeaways from this, if I was I suppose in the audience, is to ensure that we listen and learn from other people around what works in these meetings. You know, make sure we take into culture, accessibility, and also how effective we are achieving the goals that we're trying to deliver as part of our meeting. Focus on the people, really important. If everyone's feeling comfortable and engaged, then let's face it, a good meeting is likely to follow, and then you'll achieve the results. And then I think it's really important, again, going back to that 2 years of digital transformation or change that's happened, is this is an opportunity to as we move out of lockdown, is to take what's good of this experience and change the processes that we might have had back in the day, so that we can, you know, improve work-life balance, cut down on commuting. But where necessary, we will, you know, occasionally go in the office. But the key thing here is that if you've got subset of the people in the office and subset of people remotely, we're going to have to start to work out, using the tech probably, how we're going to have that hybrid environment engaged in the meeting. And that is another area that technology can help with. Again, depending on the vendor you use, they'll have tools to allow you to do that. So one of the other takeaways is, if you are using platforms and you don't know all the bells and whistles on them, make sure that you maybe take some time out to have a bit of a play and a read up on them, because again, if you put those into practice, it will make the meeting hopefully better. Last thing I'll say is here's a bunch of resources that we'll share with you. These are all in effect non-technical, primarily at least, just talking about how to run meetings, you know, crisis communications. The three I'll pick out specifically at the bottom. There is a virtual events forum. If you do use Microsoft technology and you want to ask around questions to experts around virtual events, then this is a forum that we've just recently launched to allow anybody to come and ask questions, and hopefully you'll get a meaningful and helpful answer. Accessible events guidance, I think, is a good piece of documentation to maybe familiarize yourself with. And the final thing is, if your role is to put on big events and you're using our tech, we've just published a huge event playbook which covers all aspects of this, which again takes you through from cradle to grave, literally, about all the things you might want to consider and all the choices that you have, not just from the production, but from the presenter, but also from the attendee perspective. So with that in mind, I think that's me done. I'm going to come out of presentation mode, go back to maybe the main screen. Are there any questions? All right.
Thanks. First of all, thank you, Karl. That was fantastic. Really, really interesting stuff in there. I've made quite a few notes and how we're going to be changing some of our sort of virtual meetings within Reed. We do have lots of questions, and I feel we don't have time to get through them all and finish on time. So I picked a few of the key ones. So the first one here is, what's the internal Microsoft approach to having virtual online meetings?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And to be honest with you, Chris, I actually covered this in my session because I was preaching what I practiced, really, to be honest. So internal online meetings, a lot of them are shortish. You know, as I said, personally, 30-45 minutes is what I tend to aim for. That's a good thing. But one thing I do is, because we're Teams users in Microsoft for obvious reasons, I do a lot of asynchronous collaboration as a preamble to that decision-making process, whether that be within my organisation or with the people I work with outside of Microsoft. Sort of like we've worked together, educated each other on how to do this asynchronous work, so that we are collaborating before the meeting using Teams, jump on the call, make the decision, decide what we're going to do next. And then maybe some of that doing next piece is done asynchronously as well, to either the ultimate outcome or to such time we need to meet again for another 30-45 minute session. So we keep the calls punchy. We use the tech, you know, we're keen on accessibility. So we make sure that we use, you know, where appropriate or when possible, we use the tech to make sure that everybody's included. And literally a lot of the content and suggestions I made in last session are what we use internally as well. I hope that's been an answer. Anything else that you want to touch upon?
Yeah, so there was another question which I think you may have answered during your presentation and with what you were using, but I think the last part of it's quite interesting. What are your top recommendations for poll/form sites, and will Teams eventually develop its own poll system?
Okay, I have to be careful about talking about the roadmap because this is a public event, so apologies for that. Maybe there's something on. There is a public roadmap for Microsoft 365 that has a whole raft of Teams developments on there. In terms of, I'm fairly open-minded. If Teams doesn't necessarily have everything you need, then I use Poll EV because this is a generic event. And I didn't want to be arrogant and think everybody was a Teams user, and you know that's all thou shalt use. So Poll EV, those types of tools, some of the gamification tools are quite useful. I do use Forms a lot because again that's a Microsoft product. It's very quick and easy to create a good looking form that's got a lot of useful questions in it that I may want to capture during the online session, and then I'll publish the link. In terms of inbuilt capabilities, there if it's not in GA yet, look out for whole number of new improvements. That's the best I can give you at this point. But no, they're not there now. They will be coming.
Yeah. Brilliant. We've been using Forms an awful lot internally since we moved over to Microsoft 365, and one of the great ways we've found is actually embedding it into stream video. So let's say we've recorded some kind of meeting or internal video, actually having the form pop up at a specific point during that video when we're asking a question. We've got some really great engagement from that, so that's been great.
That's a great idea. And again, as I say, this is why it's really useful to talk to other people around. This is the feedback thing, is because if you ask people for feedback around something you've tried, they'll go, yeah, that sounds really good, but we do this. And then eureka, you go, well, that's really good as well. And by talking through some of the experience that each of us had in this virtual working domain, I think that's how we're going to really start to scale the knowledge across, you know, the UK business community, so that we as a country can, you know, given where we are today, we can be as productive as possible, you know, using the technology and using tricks such as you said, Chris, are fantastic.
Brilliant. And I've got one last question, which is, can you also use presenter mode when sharing a presentation on Teams Live and see yourself at the same time?
Not with a single screen. As far as I can remember, there may be some changes planned for that, but at the moment, as far off the top of my head, probably not. I haven't played around with multiple screens, It's one on my to-do list, but not from a single screen. And again,
I don't think the latest pop-out within the teams, I don't think that works within Live yet. So
yeah,
I'm relatively new to Live. I've been using Teams for some time, but Live is a new one, so I'm not sure on that one, I'm afraid. But I tell you what, there's been some absolutely fantastic stuff in there, Karl. Really, really beneficial. So thank you very much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Pleasure. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you, your audience, and again, have great online meetings.
No, the pleasure is all ours. The pleasure is all ours. So for everyone else that's watching, thank you very much. This webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing it to everyone for reference. So keep an eye on your emails. It will also be available on YouTube. Please do look out for details of our upcoming events on our Reed LinkedIn profile, or contact your local Reed consultants. But other than that, have a great day. Thanks, guys.